Hello everyone, it's Denise. So I'm on here to do my Bible time with you guys. I'm excited. I haven't done this in a couple days from this book because I save it to do it with you guys. So for those of you this is the book that we've been reading from. It's Illustrated Family Bible Stories, over 200 beautifully illustrated stories from the Old and New Testaments. So I'm going to show you guys. Hang on here. We're going to do 2 stories today to try to catch up. Plus, when the pictures join, I like to do more than one story, right? So I'm going to show you guys the pictures, right? This is the pictures. Okay. So first I'm going to read the facts. There's about 4 facts here. So the first fact is built to stand. All buildings need deep foundations in order to withstand bad weather. These remains of a synagogue in Capernaum date back around 2,000 years. The house that was built on sand. Jesus used the example of building on sand to illustrate the foolishness of bearing his words and not putting them into practice. Sand conveyed instability, and it would have been stating the obvious to ordinary people to say that a house had to have firm foundations if it was to stand. To build on shifting sand was asking for trouble. So the next fact, Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is nearly 800 feet below sea level in Rift Valley of the River Jordan and surrounded by hills. This makes it liable to sudden violent storms. In the semi-tropical climate, droughts of colder air rush down from the hills and whip up the waves. And then the last fact, fishing on the Sea of Galilee. Fishing was the main occupation in the towns and villages bordering the Sea of Galilee, especially around the northern shores where shoals fed on the vegetable matter swept down by the Jordan. Small boats, not unlike dhows in appearance, were propelled by sails and oars. When the wind was contrary, the crew had to row into the wind. So, the 2 stories. Okay, so the first story that we'll be getting into is from Matthew chapter 7, and the title is Building on the Rock. So here we go. Jesus was coming to the end of his long sermon on the hillside near Capernaum, but he had one more story to tell. Everyone who not only listens to what I say, but actually obeys me is like the wise man who built his house on the rock, he explained. He was sensible and realistic. He knew that the dry season would not go on forever. Storms would come and his house would be battered by the winds. So he dug down deep till he came to rock. He then laid strong foundations and built the house on them. When the rain came, filling the streams until they flooded, and the winds blew in violent gusts, the house did not collapse. That's because its foundation was built on the rock, which was solid and firm. On the other hand, anyone who listens to what I say but does not obey me is like the foolish man who built his house on sand. He saw no need to take time to lay any foundations. He simply built his house on the loose sand and shingle. When the storms came, the rainwater undermined the walls, and the gale force winds blew the precarious structure over with an enormous crash. The house was totally destroyed. Your life will only be secure if you put into practice everything I have told you. As the crowds began drifting home, they took with them many challenging new ideas to think about. Jesus had spoken so much truth, and yet he was very different from some of their religious teachers. Their strict religious rules that made God appear harsh and unreasonable no longer seemed to make sense. So the next story is from Matthew 8 and Mark 4 and Luke 8. And the title is Jesus Calms the Storm. So here we go. Jesus and his disciples had spent a tiring day teaching the crowds by the Sea of Galilee. When evening came and it was time to leave, Jesus said, "Let's go over to the other side of the lake." And so they all got into a small fishing boat. Jesus was tired, so he lay down on a cushion at the end of the boat, and as the disciples set sail on the calm water, he fell fast asleep. Soon a violent wind blew up across the lake, making the waves toss the boat furiously. Water crashed into the boat and lapped around the disciples' ankles, threatening to sink them. Although they often fished on the lake, the disciples were terrified and woke Jesus up. "Teacher, look at the storm. Don't you care that we're all about to drown?" But Jesus was not afraid. Slowly he stood up and then spoke to the wind and the waves. "Be quiet and still," he ordered. Immediately the wind died down and the lake became calm once more. He turned to his companions and asked, "Why were you so frightened? After everything you've heard me say, do you still have no faith that God will look after you?" The disciples looked at each other in complete astonishment. "What kind of man is this who commands even the wind and the waves, and they obey him?" So those are the 2 Bible stories for tonight, guys. God willing, I'll be getting on here tomorrow. I love you guys so much. God bless.